In 2006, Fox canceled a brilliant little sitcom called Arrested Development because Fox is evil. I think that they feed off of the tears of fanboys and fangirls. Anyway, the world was a bleak place in the 7 years that followed, until Netflix came down from on high and revived the series with a season 4. And it was glorious. I know that season 4 has had mixed reactions among fans and critics, but I loved it. I thought it was amazing. Once I got used to the format, I was hooked and I wanted more. I still want more. And hopefully there will be more Bluth-related shenanigans in the future. But until that time, we've got about 68 episodes to choose from. And of those 68, I have ever so carefully selected my top 5 favorite episodes of this series. Here we go. Number 5. Colony Collapse. This is Job's first episode of season 4. It revolves around Job sinking lower and lower until he finally hits rock bottom. Now, Job has always been disconnected from reality to an extent, but it gets worse this year. The theme of this season is loneliness, and that's very clear in this episode with Job. For the first time in his life, he is offered unconditional love by Anne and the Veals and by Steve Holt. And he doesn't want these. He rejects them all. Instead, he hooks up with an entourage, which was an excellent parody, by the way. And they too ultimately reject him. He drifts from reality to the taunting lyrics of Simon and Garfunkel. He roofies himself even after he's had a fun night. He gets caught in a roofie circle and suffers from stage 4 syphilis. It's pretty dark, but it's also hilarious. Getaway is hilarious. His wedding is hilarious. Sound of Silence is hilarious. It's a really good balance of seeing this guy's life fall completely apart while still keeping it funny enough to where you don't get too terribly depressed. At the end of the episode, he finally realizes that he has no one in his life who cares about him, and then he promptly ignores a phone call from his son. Some people just never learn. This episode is a good setup for his second episode of the season with the Tony Wonder plot, which I will get to when I get to it. Number 4, Señoritas. This is Maybe's only episode of the season, and the best part about it is that it's a freaking Maybe episode. Even back in the original 3 seasons, there was never enough Maybe for my liking. She was often relegated to the B plot or even the C plot of any given episode. And that's just not enough for me. She's probably the most obvious example of the loneliness and isolation this season because she's always been the most forgotten member of the family. Her parents, willfully or not, forget that she even exists on more than one occasion. Having said that, one of my favorite little things about this episode is that the Funkes really do have similar mindsets. Not only do they all travel to India, but they all get on the same flight. And they all overbuy and overprepare for things, that way they have it. Like Lindsay and Tobias with the house and Maybe with all her extras. She spends the first half of the episode desperately trying to get her parents' attention, and the second half realizing that she's done nothing with her life, everyone's passed her by, and trying to pull herself out of her slump. And you know what? She does a pretty good job. It's really mostly because everyone around her lets her down that she fails. But she does effectively set up both her parents, which they more than deserve. Little side note, I like that Maybe's episode shows how useless high school is. And she's been a successful movie producer for years. Granted, the only reason she's not is because she doesn't have a high school diploma, but she's already been doing the job well. What's a piece of paper? How's that going to make a difference, It just, maybe I'm the only one who read that into it because I hated high school, but I'm just throwing it out there. She still struggles to pass algebra and she can't pronounce Eris, but she's clever, she's resourceful, and she's persistent. Her acceptance speech at the Opies was just perfect. Just so funny, especially the Phineas and Ferb bit. There was one nice moment between her and Lindsay that I really liked where Lindsay comes clean with her about taking her check and tries to pay her back. Maybe doesn't come clean with her in return, but you know what? Lindsay kind of deserves it. Still, it was nice to see. And in the end, like father, like daughter? Number 3, good grief. I love this episode for a couple of reasons. The main one being the running Charlie Brown gag. First with George Michael, then with George Sr., then Tobias, and then finally with Job. They did it 4 times in one episode. No, actually maybe 5 times. I think George Michael does it twice. The point is they do it multiple times in one episode and it never stopped being funny. And it never will. And as for the episode itself, I like seeing the different reactions the family has to George Sr. dying, and then his reaction to their reactions. That's all very funny stuff to me. Lucille is shocked and upset, but she's still first and foremost concerned with getting his will. Lucille will be Lucille. Michael's pretty nonchalant and closed off about it. Lindsay's just beside herself with grief. Job sees it as an opportunity to get into Poof magazine. Tony Wonder. And they won't even tell Buster because of his violent reaction to bad news in the past. And George Sr.'s just kind of bemused with all of them. And this is an episode where I feel Michael is the good guy he thinks he is, for the most part. He's good enough to let George Michael off the hook about George Sr. He lets the rest of the family know that George is still alive, and he keeps them all innocent and harboring him. And eventually he does remember to dig up Job. Number 2, Afternoon Delight. For sheer hilarity, it really does not get better than this episode in my opinion. Buster and the Claw Machine, the karaoke, stoned Lucille, Tobias getting blown, and everything that comes out of Job's mouth. Seriously, Will Arnett is at his comedic best here. Job gets his first little stuttering freak out, and he gives the best sexual harassment speech of all time. I like seeing Michael and Maeby bonding in this episode and George Michael and Lindsay getting jealous over it. The karaoke at both parties was just awesome. This show really does have a thing about incest, doesn't it? There's really good setup for Buster losing his hand later on in the season, but really all of season 2 up until he loses his hand is good about foreshadowing that. And it also has one of my favorite Buster lines of the whole series. "These are my awards, Mother. From Army." It's just easily one of the funniest episodes this show has ever produced. I can't think of a single joke in it that doesn't land for me. And finally, number 1, A New Attitude. So if Colony Collapse is about tearing Job down, then A New Attitude is about building him back up. After years of being directionless in life, Job finally has a sense of purpose. He's going to get revenge on Tony Wonder, the game magician. He's going to make him fall in love with him and then break his heart. There's just one problem. He has feelings for him. Which would be okay, except Tony's not really gay. He's out to destroy Job's life as well. But there's another problem. Tony has feelings for Job, too. Queer baiting and bromance and all that stuff is it's just everywhere today in popular media. It's everywhere. So far, in my opinion, this isn't that. So far, this seems like a legitimate storyline. It's been treated as such so far. It's given Job genuine character development. I know the narrator had that line about the feeling being friendship, but, you know, the narrator was openly contradicted at least 2 more times in this season alone that I can think of. Once with Lindsay and once with Maeby, so you can't take everything he says as 100% gospel. And after Job and Tony have sex, and they do have sex, unless they're going to retcon that somehow, which they better not, Job tells Michael that all that did was prove to him that his feelings were real. So, come on. I just find this storyline very touching. Job, for the first time in his life, makes a genuine connection with someone, and he does it through lies and manipulation. So it's sweet, yet in character. As for the non-blunder related things in this episode, I love all the stuff with Michael, especially the fight in My Little Ballroom. Michael has sunk so low this year that I can't tell you how satisfying it was to see that kid clock him in the face. And I say that with love. So much love. So that concludes my top 5 episodes of Arrested Development. Long may it rain. Oh, and marry me.